I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Elroy. When we take a look at Hagar, oftentimes we have a very poor view of her. You're going to find in our devotional today that that is not the case at all. The devotionalist has a very good look at Hagar, and we're going to see that the blessing that she received really mirrors what Abram had received as well. Our problem often is that we don't see the cultural differences. First time I went to Africa, we stopped at a roadside vendor. I really hit it off with this lady, and she was just hilarious, and we had a great time negotiating back and forth. At the end, I put my arm around her, and we took a picture together. I got back in the vehicle. The missionary informed me that that was not culturally acceptable. And he explained a little bit about what it meant to them. And I was completely ignorant. He told me that she probably sensed that I was ignorant and gave me a pass. We don't often understand other people's culture, so we project our culture onto them. Having a maidservant, having an individual that would set in your place if you were barren was very normal during this time period and during this culture. We see that the Bible does not condemn it, and so let us look at the story as it unfolds in the Word of God and don't overlay our culture on top of it. The situation was such that Sarah believed that she was barren and she could not have a child. They knew that God had promised them a child, in fact, a nation, and from her loins. And so, not seeing this, they came up with a culturally acceptable practice by going through this handmaid. Now, this is not what God intended. God was going to do a miracle in Sarah, and we're going to see that as it unfolds. But they went ahead, no doubt Sarah taking her handmaid in hand, joining her hand to her husband, and overseeing this to happen in her place. Then we see things begin to change. Our passage is in Genesis 16, 5 and 6. And Sarah said unto Abraham, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between me and thee. But Abraham said unto Sarah, Behold, thou maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And Sarah dealt hardly with her, and she fled from her face. And so here we have this issue between these two women, and we may not fully understand this, but this maidservant trying to kind of wiggle in to the place where Sarah was, that's not good, and that's not culturally acceptable either. And in Proverbs 30, verse 21, it says, There are three things the earth is disquieted, and for four which it cannot bear. And the fourth thing that it mentions here is a handmaid that is an heir to her mistress. And so one that kind of comes in there and tries to take the position of the mistress. This is well, the world cannot sustain this. It's going to upset the world. And so this is exactly what happened. Is it upset Sarah's world? She became incredibly emotional and drove Hagar off. And so it's when Hagar is in this state that we're introduced with Elroy, the first compound of God. God sees. And so we see that God sees her in that state to where, yes, she might have thought she was going to have a certain kind of position, and it didn't work out for her, but in all the other areas, she kind of had no control. And here's the God of the universe that introduces himself to her and shows her that he is there for her as well. He gives her promises that apply to Ishmael, And it's interesting, you should go and look at Ishmael's name and what it means. And these promises seem to mirror what God gave Abraham, and we know that this is to the Arab nations. And so God is looking after her as well. We have a God that's incredibly compassionate. We have a God that looks after us. Let us endeavor to look at the Word of God as it was intended and as it was written. Let us understand this God that is trying to manifest himself to us. Let us see him clearly, and let us trust in him. No doubt, she trusted in the Lord. She believed what he said, and she went back. It's absolutely amazing. She didn't need Abraham to bless her now because God had blessed her. Thank you so much for listening to these devotionals. I hope that you can see that God cares. He is El Roy.